Sloppy Spoilers with your host, DT2. Well, all right. Hello and welcome to Sloppy Spoilers. I'm your host, David Taylor 2. You know me as DT2 Comics Chat. I want to welcome my guest host, Jeff Bracey. What's up, Jeff?
Hello, everyone out there in not TV land, because we're not on TV, but hello.
And David Nemesis Howard. What's up, Dave?
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Happy 2020. It is time to go to a galaxy far, far away for a little Mandalorian.
And we're going to talk about The Mandalorian, Episode 8, the season finale, Redemption. There's a lot to unpack here, so we're going to dive right in. First thing I want to say is, and I don't know if my co-hosts will agree or not, I'll hear from each of them. First thing I want to say is that this opening, it broke the tension of the last episode for me. The episode 7 made you feel like you felt at the end of Empire, but this episode kind of made you feel like you felt at Return of the Jedi like it was good, but it could have been better, because the kind of tension and anticipation we had going in, and they chose to make, or the director chose to make this open funny, humor-based, just kind of goofy stuff going on. And I'm like, wait a minute. So it felt like the vibe and the tone were just maybe not the best match for the way they left it in episode 7. So what do you guys feel about that? Start with Dave.
I absolutely agree. I took some notes watching the show, and that was number one thing I had on there. I enjoyed the episode as a whole, but when I first started watching this and the whole comedic tone, and they had the two speeder bike troopers talking and doing the whole joke and everything, I was like, oh no, what have they done? I was like, this is not good. This is not going to turn out well. So I was really worried that the whole episode was going to be a bust, and I was going to be left a very disappointed man. So I'm glad that it didn't turn out that way in the end for me. There were a lot of really cool reveals that we're going to talk about, but yeah, I didn't like the way it opened either. I thought that we had left off on a very tense moment and a moment that was going to require some high drama, and instead we got... we needed another trooper in there to have the Three Stooges. That's basically what I was waiting for. So.
All right, what do you think, Jeff?
It's weird because I hated it, but I also kind of liked it, like you guys, immediately, because we left on such a dire note with last episode, and you get to this, and they're doing this little shtick, and I'm like, whoa, hey. Come on, let's get it moving. You know what's going on here, and we're really doing this like weird sort of a campy buddy cop thing, and it seemed to go on forever for no reason.
Absolutely.
See, but as I started to just kind of accept it, I did find myself enjoying it somewhat. I like the gaff that they keep picking on the fact that stormtroopers are terrible shots. Mm-hmm. And the guys are like looking at the equipment, is like, is it the equipment? Is there a visors? What the heck? We should be able to hit that thing that's 10 feet away. And the little I also do kind of like and it's weird because stormtroopers are meant to be these faceless killers, and maybe it's because we've had the sequel series where we've gotten to know a couple of stormtroopers. So maybe that's one of the reasons why we're actually humanizing a couple of them here and there.
Right.
And these are like a couple of dudes just hanging around the water cooler, killing time while they're waiting on orders. So that was kind of interesting. Plus, having that military perspective of the kind of hurry up and wait thing.
Now,
but I was really glad when IG showed up and just went to town.
I will say one thing though. We've talked about it in other episodes where I have this theory, that I'm still going to hold on to. We'll see what happens. That the kid is doing something. He's got something going on back there.
Right.
moments, especially when that one stormtrooper kept wanting to see him, where I was wondering if this is going to be a situation where he's influencing the stormtrooper's mind. They're going to like fight over him or something. And it never reached that point, but it was still in the back of my mind. So, I was a little intrigued by that, but yeah, it just went on for a long time. And I was like, where is all of this going? So,
Well, and also when you make, because everybody on Twitter was saying the stormtroopers not being able to shoot is canon now. But when you do it like they did it, they were missing things that were like 10 feet away from them.
Yeah.
And they missed IG-11, who was like 2 feet away from them. And I'm like, once again, see, this is Taika Waititi. This is the guy that did Thor Ragnarok, who thought the God of Thunder should be a joke and everything was funny. And whatever tension happened, it was undercut by a joke 5 minutes later.
Yeah.
And I don't really feel like that was the best fit for, again, how we left episode 7 and where this episode needed to go as far as I was concerned. But, I was like, okay, it just kind of made me roll my eyes. And I'm like, I was expecting a more serious moment. And I think the setup earned a more serious moment because we talked it up so much on our last pod until there were so many cool things that could have happened.
Mm-hmm.
So the coolest thing that did happen was IG-11 showing up and regulating. I'm like, okay, at least we get that. Because they kept punching the baby. And I'm like, every time I got upset, like, pow, they keep punching this kid. And I'm like, oh, okay, we're going to need an answer for that.
Yeah, it's like, come on, force lightning him or something.
something, because I'm like, we're not going to let that. But, I wanted to see more with Khalil. I wanted to see him really getting gunned down. Did he fight? Just so many other things I wanted to see other than, guys who can't hit a tin can that's, 5 feet in front of them.
Yeah, and how did Quill die? Who killed him? Because I have a hard time believing those guys shot him. So.
Because they just proved they can't shoot.
Yeah.
Maybe they're better off using the speeder bike blasters.
That's what I'm thinking. They ran him down and just hit him with those blasters and whatever. It couldn't have been a handheld weapon.
No.
So,
because we do have evidence that at least they could hit in the vicinity of Luke in Return of the Jedi as long as they're firing the guns on the blaster.
Right. That's right. So, and honestly, even though I know we're going to come back to it later, honestly, I still feel like Khalil deserved better because like we talked about last time, it gave it some gravitas to see a beloved character die and to see that, I won't say no one is safe, but at least someone we've grown to know and care about can be taken out. That does give weight to your show.
Yeah, I respect that decision. It's something Joss Whedon was always willing to do on his shows.
Right.
And I don't want to second guess writers and directors all the time, but once again, it's a situation where it just seems like I've never edited a whole show together. I've done some small videos here and there, but it seems like just an establishing cut where you could see those just a stormtrooper hand taking the dead baby from Queel, and then as they're zooming off, the ramp comes down and you see IG-11's feet, and then you cut away from that. Just that would have given us a sense that Queel died, protected the baby, they ripped the baby from his cold dead hands, and IG-11 is coming out to deal some justice, So
I think the point of not doing that was they wanted you to just wonder about IG right up until the very end.
Right.
Okay. Well, he beats the one stormtrooper into his own speeder bike. That was great. Breaks the other one's wrist. That was great. So at least we got that. So as he speeds off, I'm still saying to myself, if his primary thing was to keep the baby safe, would he have been safer staying at the ship and initiating the ground security protocol like Mando told him to? What do you guys think? Start with Bracey.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question. There was a little bit of family drama going
on. He gets the baby and speeds off towards Mando and the gang, as because I guess he knows he has to rescue them.
Mm-hmm.
His primary command is to keep the baby safe. Wouldn't it have been safer for him to stay with the ship and initiate ground security protocols like Mando told him to?
Yeah, I did think that was once again, it was not like oh, I'm going to drive into battle with the baby strapped to my chest, where
Right.
everybody's likely to be aiming their blasters. So I was kind of surprised by that. And remember, I predicted that he was going to go flying off in the ship and make his big entrance that way,
Right.
which I still think would have made a lot more sense than zipping in on a speeder bike.
That just kind of threw me off if protecting the baby was the primary thing. I'm like, okay, you've taken him from the non-shooting stormtroopers, great. So now you're going to put him in the middle of a firefight.
A huge firefight in his, as openly protected a position as possible. Like, oh yeah, sure, he flipped his torso around to shield the baby. He's like, dude, why aren't you in the Razor Crest?
Right.
Why aren't you swooping down there and just raining fire?
Right.
And instead, you drop into a firefight right in the middle of like 100 guys.
On a speeder.
That was another thing, like we said last episode about like movie logic.
Mm-hmm.
That was definitely some movie logic going on there because it didn't make sense practically in a real world sense.
I didn't think so. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, I agree. I never thought about what you're saying, but it makes perfect sense that, if he was following, his actual program and his directive, he would have gone back to the safest place, not rushed into a place where, he's not directed to protect Mando or anybody else there. He has no ties to them really at all. His job was to keep that baby safe, so he would have gone somewhere else. I don't think he would have gone there. And I'll be honest with you, even though we got some really cool visuals, I definitely agree that this was some movie logic again. The thing that would make the most sense and keep IG-11 alive and the baby alive would have been to do something completely different than what he did.
Mm-hmm.
But I liked the visuals when he eventually got in the fight and he was turning and keeping the baby safe that way. But him just swooping through and just destroying the whole town as he's going through, yeah, it looked cool. But I don't know, it just kind of stressed credulity for me a little bit. I was like, what is going on here? But okay. I was like, okay, if this is what we're doing. But exactly. Yeah, I thought it was a little. Like I said, I thought the opening of the show was a little weak, and I was a little worried. I was like, where are we going with all this? So
that's right. In Jedi, when Luke is about to be thrown in the Sarlacc pit, and he's already got R2 in position, and he gets his new lightsaber, and then he just whomps everybody's butt. I love that, and rescued Leia Han and everybody. I did. Like, nobody liked the way Boba Fett went out.
No.
It was just so incompetent. So it was one of those things where, again, the build-up is better than the payoff. I'm like, wait a minute. People are acting nonsensically. But anyway, so we
That's
definitely...
weird, too, because like, there was actually a draft of the script where he was supposed to have a much bigger part throughout the whole movie.
Right. He should have. And he definitely deserved that for proving in Empire that he was a crafty and cunning character. So while he would be taken out so, in such a bumbling way, I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess you guys just wanted to get finished. I can understand that.
I'd love to know, just a little bit of a sidebar for a second, but I would love to know what happened between Empire and Jedi that suddenly George Lucas decided that he needed to provide slapstick and, comedy, like over-the-top comedy in his movie, because there was definitely funny moments in the different movies, but they were funny moments born naturally of whatever the scene was, not forced stuff where you get the goofy howl as Boba Fett goes down into the Sarlacc pit. So,
yeah, and the Sarlacc burping afterwards.
Yeah,
right. Well, it's pretty much known that Lucas doesn't love Empire like we do. And but I believe that Kirshner said before he died, he wishes he could have reconsidered and actually directed Jedi. They were all so tired because even Carrie Fisher said they worked so hard on Empire to get it all right. And he was so tired, the production team was so tired, he I don't want to think about jumping into another movie. But in retrospect, he said, I probably should have done it. Because again, Empire's tone and everything it set up was so perfect, and Lucas was not actually the best fan of that, which you can see in the prequels.
Mm-hmm.
So, he probably wanted to, do something else. And plus, we have the Ewoks and all that. So it's one of those situations where the artist and the content creator has one vision, but then it takes a different turn.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes they're not 100% willing to go with that turn. And they try to pull it back. And that's kind of always been the story of Star Wars. Like, we fell in love definitely with the first movie, but Empire is the one that changed the game. And so ever since then, we've wanted something like that, which is why people love the Vader scenes in Rogue One.
Definitely.
Waiting on that since Empire. Because there's nothing like that in Jedi, not for Vader, there's not.
Yeah. I would say Star Wars is more the adventure flick, and Empire is when it became a space opera type, so.
That's right. With the greatest, or one of the greatest reveals in cinematic history. Okay, so we're zooming back to town. Cara, Mando, and Greef are pinned down, and all of a sudden we discover that Moff Gideon has the 411 on all of them. So he knows Mando's real name. He knows Cara's full name. He knows what Greef's been doing and all that. Kind of catches them off guard. They really don't know what to do with that. And we also find out that Cara was originally from Alderaan, which explains her beef with the Empire, which I thought was really, really cool.
Yeah.
And, just giving some background to the character. And we've talked about it before, that sometimes just a line or two can weave together an entire plot. And I think this is one of those situations where it heightened the danger for him to say, I know your names, you think you guys are these smooth underground operating bounty hunter types, but I know who you are. And I was like, holy cow.
And we got a reveal about Mando's origin. So
I must admit, and then I'll let you guys jump in. I must admit, every time I hear Giancarlo talk, I expect him to be Gus Fring now. You know what I'm saying? He played Gus so good in Breaking Bad until I think that's who he is now. So it's kind of like a Chris Reeve Superman thing. So when I see him use any other type of tone or accent, I'm like, what? What are you doing? Who is that guy? But anyway, so what did you think about all the reveals in that monologue? And then we'll get to the incredible mini blaster gun, the E-Web. Holy cow. But what did you guys think about the reveal? Start with Bracey.
Oh, the reveal was great. I think I was caught as off guard as the characters themselves were. It was like, whoa. We speculated that there was more going on with the Moff last time, but we had no idea it was going to run this deep.
Yes.
And so for him to have that much knowledge, I'm still trying to figure out, like, how could he have put all this together? Is he old enough to have been there for the battle where, Mando got adopted into the Mandalorians? Was he personally responsible for that? There's just like so many questions I have about that. There's definitely times he could have interacted with Cara because he's talking about, like, hey, you recognize this space Gatling gun we got here? It's killed many a drop trooper. You got to be pretty familiar with this tech. Knowing about Greef isn't too hard to figure out, especially if he's had Imperials in the city for any amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
But still, that was really shocking, really surprising, and a great additional twist and plot reveal, I thought. So I'm looking forward to seeing more, because we had speculated about his connection with Baby Yoda. Now I'm speculating about his connection with these three characters. What is going on there?
Well, he was part of the Imperial Security Bureau during the Purge. And remember, he also mentioned the Siege of Mandalore?
Yeah.
But when they got scattered across the galaxy...
So he's essentially an intelligence officer.
Right. So he had access to all of those records.
Right.
Probably how he knows who everybody is.
That's probably how he found out about Yoda's species and their force sensitivity and things like that.
Right.
Because at this point, I remember when when Mando later was talking to the forger, the female Mandalorian,
The armorer.
yes, the armorer. Because it's been so long in between, the prequels and the current movies. Jedi have become a myth. People have forgotten mostly about what the Force is, other than oh yeah, the Force is something you talk about, but the Force is an actual, real, viable thing that can be used. So that's all quite interesting.
I also think, I still think that, if you think about society as a whole, unless you lived on Coruscant or you lived on like a big cosmopolitan planet, like maybe Alderaan is another one, that probably the average person never met a Jedi, never saw a Jedi, and if they've heard of them, they think it's, exaggeration or something. So,
well, sure, and obviously, the Emperor went to great pains to make sure that the Jedi's name was mud as far as everybody was concerned.
Right.
And so all it took was a generation for them to pass into rumor and legend.
Yeah. I think for me, the reveals were really cool. I think the ultimate, for me personally, the ultimate reveal happens at the end of the episode, and I don't want to jump ahead, but when we get there, I think that reveal says a lot about why Moff Gideon knows what he knows, based on information from other shows about what we learned there. So I'll get to that later. The one criticism I did have of this, I think a large part of my problem, especially with the various scenes in this episode, was that I think the writing and the concept was very good, and I think the execution and the direction was not as good. There were some odd choices that hit on some very things that raise a lot of red flags for me when I watch comic book movies in particular, or science fiction movies. And for this one, it was the monologuing. It was the classic James Bond villain. He did a monologue, and they gave them till nightfall to make a decision when he had the upper hand.
Oh my goodness!
Why
oh,
did he just say you've got 10 seconds to come out?
Yeah, exactly. I was like, he revealed that he's got that complete upper hand. He knows all the information. He's got the overwhelming force. He's got them exactly where he wants them. And I was like, Moff Gideon is not an idiot. And he should have just been like, and now that I've told you this, even giving him 5 minutes, would have been like, all right, you get 5, I'll give you 10 minutes. He's like, but I wouldn't give him no nightfall. You'd be like, you've got 10 minutes to figure out how you're going to come to terms with the fact that you're going to come out here and surrender to me. So.
Or just a step back before that, when they found the vent that was going to let them escape, they found they couldn't easily cut through it. I thought that was a really good piece of storytelling, because normally when you find a secret vent, you just open it or pull it open and people just escape. I mean, you see that all the time. Yeah. But this time they turned up the tension by saying, yeah, it's there, but you can't easily cut through it. And so they realized this is not going to be as easy as we thought.
Now that particular incident you're talking about shocked me, because they didn't go for an obvious there, which was, I thought that somebody was going to pull a Princess Leia and say, somebody's got to save your skins, and blow out the vent, like she does in A New Hope. So I was pleasantly surprised by that, because I thought they were going to completely go back to that moment from episode 4. So.
Yeah, it's pretty nice, because Kara tries to,
and
then it was like, and she's got the biggest gun in there, and it's like, oh, one thing that occurred to me as well that was odd. So last episode, they shot up the place, maybe not being sure if Baby Yoda was in there or not. Mm-hmm. So they risked killing their prize. Maybe they don't need him intact, because they were going to harvest him from what we know from like episode 3. And then they send the flame trooper in there to like roast everything. Is like, how much of this little green alien do you need? Because first you shot the place up, now you're setting the whole place on fire. That seems pretty logical given your goals.
Well, again, I have to agree that it just took me out of it so quickly when you have this perfect setup that we found the vent, but we can't get through it easily. So this may be more of a firefight than we thought. And also, I have to admit, on a little side note, I thought this is why you need a lightsaber. But that's just me. I'm like, this is why you need a Jedi, because if I ever was a character in the Star Wars world, I would definitely be a Jedi, but probably a great one. But anyway, so then he all of a sudden does this.
Trooper was a full visual, though, so.
Yeah, true. But he does this cartoon villain, Wile E. Coyote, Batman 66, convoluted trap kind of, I've got you. I know who you are. You can't get away. I finally got this baby cornered. And I'll give you to sundown. And I'll give you 6 hours. I was like, what did you say? Oh, my goodness. I was like, okay.
Next
so it's another one of those things where, I agree with what you said a few minutes ago, that the story itself was great, but some of the directing choices were just kind of mind-blowing. I'm like, really? You have this great setup, and then he does something like that? Nobody would do that. If I've been chasing Baby Yoda across the galaxy, and he's now literally 10 feet away from me, and I've got firepower to go get him, then I'm not going to give you no 6 hours. Oh, good.
And let's be honest, is there a bigger eye roll, trope in, spy or sci-fi or comic book than the villain who monologues and then gives the hero every option to escape or find a way to get out of it or something? I mean, there is no bigger eye roll situation than that, so much so that, is the main joke, punchline in The Incredibles,
So what I thought was going to happen, if it had played out like we thought it was going to, I thought at that point, one of the characters was going to sacrifice themselves.
Yeah.
So I thought that Grief was going to say, basically, the same thing Carl Weathers said in Predator, I'm just going to go ahead and be a human shield now.
Right.
I'm just going to go ahead and take all this blast of fire or maybe set something off, or I'm going to do something. You guys get through that vent, get the baby out of here. And, I thought that was going to happen. Or I thought Kara was going to say, since she had the biggest gun, she was going to go out there and just go out, like a champ.
Well,
just take as many people out with her as she could. Before, I thought we were going to see the slow motion gun down, and that's what I thought was going to happen.
I have a question for you guys on that. I was watching the show, and I thought the same as you, that Grief was going to be the one that was going to take one for the team, and it was going to make things right. And
because he owed the baby one on top of everything else,
right? And based on the acting and the scenes, it sure looked like we were going there. And I'll be honest with you, if I had to guess, and this is just me guessing, I have no inside information or not, it would seem like the original ending or the original way this episode was supposed to go is not the way it went, and that they reshot the ending so that you have the happy ending with Grief and Cara Dune, because I think one of those two characters was supposed to die based on looking at the expressions and how everything was being set up with Grief and the way he was talking in there. And I think something was changed. That's just my impression. There's nothing, I can't back that up with anything, but that's really what I felt like was being built towards. And then it just kind of collapsed. It fell apart.
That's very interesting. And definitely what we've heard about Rise of Skywalker, that very scenario you just described. And if all this other information is coming out, then there were a whole lot of things that were originally written and shot one way that were changed to give us a particular outcome at the end.
Yeah.
That's a really good thing because, as we have pointed out, just logically speaking, based on everything we've seen literally up to that moment, there's no way he'd just be like, okay, so by the time the sun sets, I'm like, what? So anyway, immediately after that, we get the full Mando origin flashback. And so we basically see that he's rescued by a Mandalorian, and I swear I thought that was Boba Fett at first.
Did too. Totally thought it was Boba.
I was
Yeah.
like, Boba, that's Boba. I said, oh no, okay, no, that's not Boba. But
And we saw some classic assault droids from circa Attack of the Clones.
yeah, with the hand blasters,
Yeah.
wrist blasters. So the Mandalorians are out there just cleaning house with the jetpacks or wherever, and our Mando, Din Djarin, sees, I keep wanting to calling him Djarin, but anyway, he sees that, what's going on. He's rescued by a bunch of Mandalorians, and that's when we fully see what happened to him, that he is officially a foundling. And then that's what leads us into the next big reveal, but it's not really a reveal for most of us. But the idea that the Mandalorians are not a race, but a creed, that they are much more of a sect and a belief and a faith, and not an ethnic group, or not people that all originated on a planet.
Well, there was that one episode where the Jawas stole his gear. He even states, they want him to put away his blasters. He's like, I'm a Mandalorian. Blasters are part of my religion.
Right. That's right. And so we see Mando's full origin and why he does what he does, and so we kind of get the camera pulled back to see much more about the Mandalorians, who they are, and what they do. And I personally, I loved it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have minded if they were an ethnic group or a race or whatever, but I love the idea of a faith-based system, a creed, a belief system so strong that you pledge yourself to it. You don't take your helmet off. You don't, the whole bunch of things you do and you don't do, because you believe so strongly in what you're doing. And that's really the strength of the Mandalorians. It's one of those things where you have to fully commit yourself to their way of life. And because we now know that our Mando was a foundling and got kind of adopted in, that's why he's so committed. So it added another layer of depth to the character of me, and I really, really enjoyed that. What did you guys think about that? Start with Dave.
Yeah, I appreciated it as well. I thought it was really well done. I also appreciated that they gave us a reason, a legitimate reason that's believable for why he hates droids so much. He watched droids kill his mother and father. So,
yes.
He's got a legitimate reason for not wanting anything to do with them. And it makes sense that even when his mind is telling him, this droid can be trusted, I can do this, he's got a visceral gut reaction to droids because of this foundational experience. I also like the fact, with the foundlings, I think it's interesting what they're doing with Mandalore, just as a concept. Mandalore, the leader, and then the Mandalorians. I'm wondering if they're going to go into more of that, because it's obvious there is such a thing as an ethnic Mandalorian, but it's kind of like, it's almost like being Jewish. It's like you can be ethnically Jewish, or you can follow the Jewish faith, or you can be both.
Yeah.
But those are two different things, and it's interesting that they're setting it up that way. And it's something, I don't know that I've ever seen anything like that most of the time in science fiction. You have alien races, but you don't often have things like this. It's almost like, I think the closest I could come to describing it, as far as things I've seen in other science fiction, would be the Bene Gesserit in Dune.
Yeah, that's a good one.
What do you think, Bracey?
Well, it's kind of interesting. Dave makes a really interesting point. And some of the research I've been doing into Mandalorians, because back when I missed out on episodes 3 and 4, I've been wanting to get into some stuff about the backstory of Boba Fett and Jango Fett and how they may or may not tie into the Mandalorians. Because, they've set up this thing like you don't remove your helmet, but in the Clone Wars cartoon, we do see that the Mandalorians remove their helmet. And one of the ideas that I came across was that it's the non-ethnic Mandalorians who don't remove the helmet. They take on the identity of a Mandalorian. And that sort of ties into your religious warrior sect idea.
Mm-hmm.
Because now you've literally taken on this cultural identity. So now it doesn't matter if there's a Greedo under there or any of these other aliens or human or whatever. as long as that helmet fits down over your head, you're a Mandalorian. And that's all any other Mandalorian ever sees. You're all just Mandalorians. Now, another idea that came to me right as you were talking, Dave, again, about the religious aspect to them, this kind of Bushido-ish code of honor, which, the samurais were kind of religious warriors in the same way. I realized what a perfect counterpoint they are to the Jedi, even more so than the Sith. While the Sith are these dark Jedi, the Mandalorians are also people who have this rigid code, who take in younglings and raise them within their ideology to become these expert warriors.
That's interesting.
Yes.
I hadn't thought about that. That really is. They really are kind of, but they eschew they have nothing to do with mysticism. They're all about martial prowess.
Yeah, they're the total opposite. It's it's the secular versus the spiritual. It's the high tech, versus, like you said, the mysticism. I like that because it's such a counterpoint to what the Jedi are. I really dig that now that I've had this epiphany.
Yeah, that's cool. That's a cool idea. I hadn't thought about that, but that really is very cool and very true.
And it also makes the story world a lot more real because that's what, our world is like. People with different creeds and beliefs, and some people that hold to them more strongly than others. And like you said, an ethnic versus a religious entrance or both. But also, here's the thing. It sets the moral, how can I put it? It sets the moral frame for where we go next. Because one of the things, and we've talked about it over and over, one of the things about this story is that Mando had a change of heart. And we have yet to see if that's because of his own background, which is what they keep alluding to, him being a family.
Mm-hmm.
Because Baby Yoda is manipulating him. Because that's going to change the whole game if they ever have a definitive answer to that question. But it also, it's a hive of scum and villainy, Mos Eisley. Maybe it's got people that are just living by a different way of life, because it's not like the Jedi didn't, dismember people and, use mind control and fix bets and do a whole bunch of stuff. So it kind of changes the moral fabric for me.
See, it's interesting now that I've gotten the full backstory on Mando. I'm still convinced, there's a part of me that's still convinced that the kid is exercising some outsized influence on those around him in some way. But to me, after seeing this backstory and then flashing back to that episode where IG-11 was going to execute the child, knowing that he faced down an assault droid getting ready to execute him, I think that's really where that impetus to act on his part came from, because it was such a strong emotional reaction that he almost died at the hands of a droid come to execute him. And here he is. He has to watch a bounty droid, a hunter-killer droid kill this child, and he just can't allow that. So that scene, to me, now seems to fit much more into an emotional context for Mando. And I can't remember his name. It was a cool name too. It was such a cool name. I was like, "That's a cool name," but I can't remember.
I'm finding the same thing. It's a cool name, but I can't quite get it to stick in my head yet.
Yeah.
It's Din Djarin, but the J is silent, which is why I want to keep calling him Djarin.
All right, Django.
That's right. Okay, on that note, we're going to take a 30-second break and let you guys.
One would think that for all the different podcasts that Undercover Tapes has, at some point, you would hear from the elusive audio guy. Well, lo and behold, it is I, the audio guy, here to tell you that we have a plethora of podcasts to tickle your fancy, from K-pop cosmos to sloppy spoilers, Flipside Focus to the capes, Check out all of our podcasts on all of your favorite platforms.
And we are back. All right, so now we see IG-11 is flying in to the firefight, and he is just regulating. And even though, like we said, he protects the baby and flips his chest, but the baby's right in front of him. He's literally center mass. And Baby Yoda is laughing and giggling. He is flying through and taking everybody out. And I'm like, okay, well, I just felt like, okay, well, I guess it's got to be Disney-fied because, you know, if it was Joss Whedon or if it was the late, you know, Kirshner, if it was somebody that had a little bit more weight, you know, things might have been a little bit different, but, you know, we have to have that cute, funny moment. So our heroes are pinned down, but IG-11's on the way, and I thought it was really funny that Grief took a minute to have like a shot of Romulan ale. Did you catch that?
Yeah.
Oh, was that Romulan ale?
I'm just saying that. It looked like Romulan ale, though. Is that, you know, bright blue liquid. So,
yeah.
So anyway, so IG comes in and regulates, and the fireworks start for real, and he's just taking everybody out left and right. And so this gives our heroes a chance to actually get through that gate, but not before Mando gets hurt. And so Mando gets hurt and pretty much figures that this is it for him.
Can we go back a second?
Sure.
See, I thought this was one of the strongest points of this episode. So IG-11 rides in, and those three heroes venture forth and start shooting up the place. Now, in a, I'm not going to say poorly written, but in a stereotypically written episode of science fiction, they would have shot up the place and escaped and gotten out. I appreciated that they were outgunned, and they got outgunned and outfought, and Mando got hurt, and they had to retreat back to where they started. Yeah. I appreciated that quite a bit.
What do you think, Bracey? I agree with you, Dave. I really like that.
I agree as well. And the fact that Mando was hurt so bad that it looked like, you know, he's like, you know, everybody leave me, you know, go flee with the baby. And you know what? For a moment, I really thought the show had the balls to let him die, because the show is called The Mandalorian. It's not called his name.
Right.
Who I keep forgetting, you know, and they already killed a character, even though it was a side character. They already killed Queel, so I already felt like a little unsafe, which was great. And I was like, you know, you could kill off old Pedro Pascal here, and you could keep this thing moving on with the armorer taking the baby someplace.
Right.
You know, just some Mandalorian, because, you know, this is the way. And especially when she goes ahead and she treats, later on in the scene, she treats the baby like a foundling. You know, you two are a clan. You're a clan of two now. It's foundling and your father figure. And I was like, wow, you know, I was really impressed, because in something you expect to be a little formulaic, like Nemesis was saying, I thought like, oh, they're going to shoot their way out, and to subvert that expectation in an exciting way. Are you paying attention, Ryan Johnson? That's the way you subvert an expectation. And I was fully like, okay, they can kill him off and I'll be fine with it. I'll miss this character, but they'll move on in an interesting direction. And so that was pretty darn cool. I really like that whole scene. I like Mando's scene with IG-11. And, you know, and that whole setup was terrific, and it gave us a really, really strong character moment, as well as a really strong set piece right before and after.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And when the helmet came off with IG-11, to see Pedro Pascal under there and how badly he was hurt, I mean, the impact, that's the only time we'll see his face this entire season, and they delivered a great impact with it. It was really good.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I thought the moment he had with Kara before that was really good too, because she seemed to be genuinely pleading with him, to save his life. So she's invested.
Yeah.
So no matter what she was before, she really feels like she's, in this with him now. And then also in the midst of that, we get to see, of course, the flame throwing stormtrooper with the red, red emblems and the red accents on his armor.
Right.
Yeah.
And what does Baby Yoda do? We talked about it before. So if Moff Gideon is trying to capture Baby Yoda, I'm like, is burning them out really the way to go? But apparently he wasn't too worried about Baby Yoda, because Baby Yoda stands up and once again says, I am one with the Force and the Force is one with me. And he turns that fire back on him. Now, we've talked about it every time, but I love how every time he uses the Force, it costs him something. So we get a very clear idea that he's straining, he's still learning. But he holds those hands up, man, he stops that fire. I was like, holy cow. I just thought it was awesome, because they all thought it was over. And then when they saw what he was doing, Mando, Cara, and Grief, they were like, who is this kid? And he was just holding that fire back. I was like, good grief. It felt like Dark Phoenix, like what Dark Phoenix should have felt like. And then he does a little wrist flick, like, I'm done with you, so go away, be gone. And then plops down. I thought that was so cool. I thought it was cool that IG-11 had the blowtorch that was strong enough to cut through the gate. And so what I'm saying is, this is one of those rare writing situations where everybody involved in the mix has a necessary part to play. And if you take any one of these characters out of this particular firefight, they don't make it. They needed everybody to do exactly what they did. So even though it was still tactically ridiculous of Moff Gideon to walk away and to shoot flames in there, we get to see the purpose of each character.
Right.
Yeah, because like when you have an ensemble like that,
Mm-hmm.
like watching some episodes of Arrow and stuff like that, and sometimes people fall away. It's like, when a character becomes useless, they stick out like a sore thumb.
Oh my goodness, you said something right there.
That's crazy. It was like, who's the character from Flash that's like most like that? Like the vibe at certain points and different people like that. So
Yeah.
It's more Ralph than Cisco on the.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'll be honest with you. The thing with the Baby Yoda with the fire, has a Jedi ever done that before, or a Sith? I don't remember ever seeing anything like that before.
Not cinematically, as far as I recall. They have shown it in comic books.
Okay. See, the crazy part for me, and this wasn't a negative, but I'm just going to throw this out there. It's getting to the point with Baby Yoda, with the kid, that he's doing all this stuff that sooner rather than later, I need to know something about his background. Because he's not entering, Rey territory yet. But at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if Palpatine is his grandfather or something. That's all I'm going to say.
Oh, you are absolutely right. It is definitely kind of a Yoda ex machina every time they need him.
Yeah.
I love that, Yoda ex machina.
Sooner or later, you're going to have to give me some reason why this kid is because the Force choke, and I was with you, but now I'm starting to see all sorts of stuff, and I was like, okay, I understand the kid's strong in the Force, but come on now. It's like, I need some.
The very first demonstration of Force power we see, I already thought that was too much. I thought he was going to do like the Beast Charm, like Anakin did in the pit on Genosha, where like he calmed the Rentra. I did not expect him to lift up old Space Rhino. I was like, whoa, that's some pretty serious Force power right there. So yeah, it's like you said, Nemesis. At some point, and I'm thinking sooner rather than later, you're going to have to give us something.
Yeah.
Well, I think the point is to emphasize, of course, that this species is kind of naturally strong in the Force. That's the whole point of making it a Yoda-type character. But I agree that we're going to need a little bit more information about how this all works, because he just keeps pulling out greater and greater feats in the Force. And but in all fairness, now remember, we did see in The Force Awakens Kylo Ren stop a blaster in midair and hold it there.
Oh yeah.
For as long as he needed to. So that wasn't necessarily fire, but it's similar to this kind of thing. So is there a precedent for it? Yes. But the fact that this particular character keeps doing kind of things we've seen everybody doing and some things we haven't seen anybody do, we're going to need to know.
Yeah, I mean, even with him paying a price for it, I'm getting to the point where I was like, okay, you got to give me something. You got to give me some. You got to feed the beast here. I need to know, why is he able to do these things? You know, even if it's stuff that we've speculated on, like his species is naturally, powerful in the Force. It's like you got to give me a holocron entry. You got to give me something. So.
No, I agree. Now, the one thing that I may disagree with a little bit on, and I could have lived without the helmet removal.
Okay.
I could have lived without the face reveal, and I'll tell you why. It's because, to me, it just kind of breaks the mystery of the character a little bit, even though we know it's Pedro Pascal and what he looks like and all that. It breaks the mystery of the character, and it was such a strong point of emphasis all season long. I would have waited till season 2 or maybe 3 to do it, because I think it would have had more impact. I love the moment with I-11. I love the idea of him saying, "I am not a living thing." I love that line.
Yeah, so, like that of course made it okay. He gave him permission to do it.
Right. But so I personally, just from a writing or a directorial point of view, would have saved that, because that little piece of information, even though we know what he looks like, but that little piece of information, we would have wanted to see it even the more in season 2 or 3.
Mm-hmm.
Now that it's happened, the tension is kind of broken, Yeah,
we could have teased it the Lucas way, like you don't see Darth Vader's face all the first movie. Second movie, you see the back of his head. Third movie, you finally get the reveal.
Right.
I guess I could definitely see your point and how, saving it for later would have been much more impactful. Mm-hmm. On the flip side, I think that, it really added into what Jeff was talking about earlier, in that it made me appreciate just how badly he was hurt, and made me think that actually he may die. There was a moment there when I thought he would insist that, I don't care, droid or no droid, this helmet is staying on, and I'm dying the way I lived. I actually did think that might happen, which is shocking to me, because, there was no way, the rational part of my brain that isn't watching the episode in the moment would have thought that they're killing off Pedro Pascal's character. But watching that, there was a part of me that thought that the helmet was going to stay on and he was going to die. So.
Now, I agree with that, too, because I thought the same thing. I thought it was going to be like, no, under no circumstances am I removing this helmet. And he was just going to roll his head and kind of, roll over and breathe his last.
Mm-hmm.
So, I agree there. And also, since you talked about giving me a little bit more, all of a sudden, I want to know more about Bacta, because it looks like Bacta can heal a wound to the brain in a few hours. He sprays a little mist, and all of a sudden, his brain is repaired. I'm like, wait just a minute. That stuff is way more powerful than I originally imagined it.
Another plot armored device that just, once again, we're all hitting on the same thing. I was like, he even says, like, you should feel better in a few hours, and then he's up and fighting and hanging on to TIE fighters. It's like, wow, that stuff worked a lot faster than he said it was going to.
You know what I immediately flashed back to? I immediately flashed back to the beginning of Empire and was like, what in the heck happened to Luke out there on Hoth that he would had to be submerged in a Bacta tank all that time?
He must have been about to lose his doggone limbs to hypothermia.
Yeah, I was like, good Lord, what happened out there? So
I was like, okay, so I want to see some more of that, because it was just a 5-second spray and it basically did brain surgery.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like with the portable carbonite units. Boy, that technology sure has advanced from needing a whole pit and a whole room to freeze somebody in carbonite to, like, yeah, I can just stick them in the door frame here, and now we got little back sprays that fix you up pretty quick. Why isn't everybody carrying this stuff?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Why is that built into that armor that he has? So
it should be a prized substance if it can do all that.
Yeah, it's more valuable than the doggone Beskar.
So now they move through the mummy tunnels, and I thought of the mummy while they were going through the tunnels. And we on most of the armor of his fallen comrades. And once again, we meet the armorer. I love that character. I love the armor. I love everything she represents. I love every scene I see her in.
Yeah, she's awesome.
Yeah, she really, really is. And she's
I
one
love
of
that
those
Trojan-style helmet of hers, too.
Yes. And she's also super committed to the creed, and she was.
You know what just occurred to me when you said talk about her helmet, and you look at the bumps on her helmet. And you were talking about this before, that this clan is not ethnically Mandalorian, but they have their religion. I wonder if she's the same race as Darth Maul.
Ah.
Well, we have seen that race, so.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting idea.
That would be really interesting if we get a helmet reveal on that one. So she's doing her job and taking the armor of the fallen comrades and melting it back down, and then she tells Mando that now Baby Yoda's a foundling, and basically, you're a pappy. Welcome to fatherhood. And I was like, okay. And she gives him the crest from the Mudhorn thing, because, now she said he's finally earned it. And she gives him, wait for it, the jetpack. Are you familiar with the Phoenix fighting technique? And I was like, at last.
And then we got a name for it, the Phoenix fighting technique. So cool.
I love how a lot of these things are named after birds. You had the whistling sparrows, those little homing rockets, and now this is the rising phoenix.
Yeah.
It's like, it makes you wonder how much of their culture, how many of the weapons and things they use are named after avians, or other things named after other fierce creatures. This will be cool to find out.
What I have to really give a shout out to the writers on this particular scene, because as far as next season of Mandalorian goes, this was the most important scene in this, or it's tied for at least the most important scene in this whole episode, because it basically sets up what he and the kid are going to be doing for, conceivable future. But it was so well written, and it wasn't heavy-handed. It fit naturally into what was going on, with backstory on the fact that it is part of the code that when you take a foundling in, they are your responsibility until you find their people, and give them back to people. So they're giving us what the next season or two is going to be about, but they didn't just say, oh, and this is what you need to do. They said, this is the way, this is the code. So it fit into the story. It was just so cleverly done.
Mm-hmm.
And man, I got to give kudos to whoever wrote that scene, because that was some really good writing.
It really was. And I love the way she takes out the stormtroopers that eventually catch up. I was like, please don't kill this character.
Yeah, with the hammer and tongs, no less. Man, I was geeking out, flashing back to I was thinking like Warcraft, like dwarves or something like that. So I was like, that's cool. The forger with the hammer and tongs just took him out.
That was some fine fight choreography right there.
Yes. Yes, it
really appreciated the moves. It looked great. It looked plausible. She looked, fast, snappy, and powerful. I dug it.
Yeah.
I did too, big time. Do you know who I thought of when I saw that scene?
Who's that?
Of Electra.
Cool.
And I said, if they really did some fight scenes the way they were supposed to, in close quarters, that's one of the things Electra's good at. I know she throws the sigh and blah, 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 blah. But that close quarter fighting, after being trained by stick in the hand, meaning you can have her surrounded and be in a very small space, and she still knows how to move to take you out.
And once again,
about this.
From a story perspective, from a writing perspective, we've always, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I've always suspected that here is the armor, this female priestess basically leading this group of Mandalorians. She commands respect. I always assumed that she, on top of being someone who could make the armor and everything, has to be good at fighting. But we haven't seen that. And then when she's sitting there and she's almost like in a meditative trance,
Yes.
I was kind of not sure. Is she going to allow herself to be killed, or is she going to take them out? And when it happened, it was absolutely natural. It was believable. It didn't strain the credibility of the show at all. They weren't forcing anything on me. I was like, well, of course she could take them out. She's a badass because she led a whole Mandalorian clan. So, so I was like, yeah, it makes sense.
The thing I love about that is we don't know if the armorer is the top warrior in the clan or they're just the ones who are best with the metallurgy or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But as good as we've seen how good a fighter Mando is, she's just in a whole different league, as she should be as the leader of the clan. And it was really great seeing that.
Yep.
Because, he even stood up to one of these bruisers. They look fairly equal, when he had a problem with what Mando was doing. But, to see her, you're like, yeah, the clan better not step out of line when she says it.
Which is why, I definitely don't want to devolve into this, but too many times we hear people, whenever you have criticisms of female characters, people like to think it's because you don't like strong female characters. That's the farthest thing from the truth, because this character is absolutely believable in her role, absolutely believable in her martial skill, and is a great character, and I love it. I think it's incredibly well done and realistic for the world, and I couldn't have liked her enough. I'd watch a show about her, so.
Yeah, if they passed the baton to her, it still would have been a very interesting season 2 if this was the last we've seen of Din Djarin, the Mando that we know. Mm-hmm. And I appreciated the way she caught their arms and snapped their joints and just, rendered those arms useless and broke them in two and snapped them at the elbows.
Well, not only that, we saw something that, would have been nice to see. I don't know if Ewoks are strong enough to do it, but, Return of the Jedi, when they're hitting the stormtroopers, it just kind of hit them, and somehow that's killing the stormtroopers when they're hitting with clubs. This time, she actually shattered a helmet.
Yeah.
With her mask, with her hammer. So I was like, damn. So I was like, all right, you go.
Throws a whole stormtrooper right into the fire hole. I'm like,
oh God, that was so great.
That was awesome. Yeah, it was really good.
Yeah, because I loved, for instance, I love the Ewoks taking out a lot of the technology, the way they dealt with the AT-ST and a bunch of their tactics, when they're logs are falling down on people and spears are flying, stuff like that. But I always hated the scene of them clubbing a bunch of stormtroopers into submission by hitting them on their helmeted heads with clubs.
Right.
And this lady made it make a lot more sense. And thank you for doing that. Attack the weak parts of the armor. Attack where the bodysuit is. Don't attack the armor itself unless you got a really nice hammer that forges Beskar and you can smash a helmet with it.
Right. But even then, she didn't kill him with that blow. She probably gave him a broken jaw or something, But you saw from there that she knew all the weaknesses of the stormtroopers' armor and exploited them, and that was amazing to see. It was really cool.
Absolutely awesome. So then our intrepid heroes make it down to the lava river, which I thought was a bit of a cliche, but okay. So we're on the lava river, and we discover an R2 unit that somehow has legs. That's a ferryman. I'm like, oh, okay. And then we come to what was a scene that brought some mixed emotions for me, because it's one of the few scenes that actually felt heavy-handed. So it felt like to me the end of T2, where John is begging the 800 unit that looks like Arnold not to go.
Yeah.
He says, I got to go away because we got to destroy this last ship. It has to end here. And John's begging him not to go. And he says, I know now why you cry, but it's something I can never do.
Yeah.
It felt like that, except way more cheesy
I'm trying not to laugh because I'm imagining a thumb coming up out of the lava.
So, so they're trying to show that Mando has actually come full circle.
Yep.
He saw a droid kill his parents and get ready to end his life. And now he's come to care about this droid that he used to hate, and that he actually blew his brains out when he first met him. And now he's like a big brother. He's a protector. He's a metal Chewbacca. He's a whatever. And he's like, don't go. We need you. Don't go. We need you. Don't go. We need you. And I'm saying to myself, okay, I get it. I get it. But it just felt a little heavy-handed to me. And also, if IG-11 was going to do what he did, he actually did not have to melt himself in the lava first. He could have waited until they got to the edge, since they saw the stormtroopers, and just jumped out then. He didn't have to have this dramatic walk where he's melting as he walks.
Right.
So, I don't know. So what do you guys think about that? Go ahead first, Bracey.
Yeah, I have to agree with a lot of that. I thought I thought the slow walk through the lava was really unnecessary. I understand why they did it, but again, it just like it kind of breaks the immersion, because you're like, oh wow, this is just so in your face the way this whole thing is playing out. And IG asks Mando for the command that will release him to go self-destruct. Like, I'll take care of the child and all that. And he never gives it, and then IG walks off anyway.
Yes.
Even without the command. It's almost like they had like a real human nonverbal kind of communication, even though they're both faceless characters at this point. It's like, because I can hear the sadness in your voice. And I was like, what Mandalorian should have done, he should have said, like, no, we need you. You become valuable. I've started to value that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he, like, I've calculated, I've run all the odds, Mando should have said, like, yes, here's the code you need to break your nursing program and go do what you have to do. That's the way that scene should have played out as far as I was concerned. And I wish it had, but, it's been a good episode with some highs and some lows.
Yeah. It depends. It depends on what mood I'm in, but I think it would have been more believable. I don't believe that the Mandalorian would have gotten over his dislike of droids that quickly. I think he would have appreciated the role the droid played. He's definitely a valuable member, but I don't think he would have become that emotionally attached to any droid that quickly. Mm-hmm. I don't really even think there was a story reason for him to be attached to that droid, except for the fact that he healed him. But it's like, okay, you're a tool. I would think that he would look at the droid more as a tool, IG-11 more as a tool. The second point is, I kept watching that scene wondering why he didn't just order IG-11 to open up his chest cavity and it's a thermal detonator, right?
Yeah.
Just take the thermal detonator out and throw it out the cave.
That's what I'm saying. The scene was written with big neon letters. Somebody has to sacrifice. Oh, okay, it's IG-11. IG-11 is going to sacrifice himself now in a very moving way.
Yeah. IG-11, sacrifice that thermal detonator out of your chest. Throw it. So...
Yeah, and since we didn't kill off Carl Weathers earlier, it's you, robot.
Yeah.
Right.
And then on top of all that, man, this is the part that really killed me, is he gets out there. Now, I don't know if those stormtroopers know what an IG unit is, but they sure seem to. And they would seem to know that an IG unit has a self-destruct function.
Yes.
And those stormtroopers not only were completely unaware of that, but when they saw a thermal detonator come out of his chest, they all sat there and stared at it.
Right.
So they could be blown up. So it's like, why isn't anybody shouting, take cover, or jumping, or doing something? So, yeah, I had a lot of problems with that. It did seem very heavy-handed.
So they've got bad shooting skills and bad judgment.
Yeah.
The Empire should go back to clones. Those guys knew how to fight.
Definitely.
So after we see this clearly over dramatic self-sacrifice by IG-11, what we get next is another Pretty good scene. I liked it a lot because the high moments are really good, but it's a little heavy-handed too. But anyway, so we get out there, and here comes Moff Gideon in his TIE fighter. Now, the first thing I thought when I saw that TIE fighter is you can strike from a distance. You don't have to get close to them at all. You can strike from so far away until there's nothing they could do to reach you. So why don't you stay at that level and just blow them away or knock them down or whatever you're trying to do, because you're still trying to get Baby Yoda. We haven't forgotten that.
Mm-hmm.
But he kind of zooms in with a little look of glee on his face, like, ha, 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 I have you now. And I was like, oh, okay. But anyway, I'm glad we didn't have to wait till next season to see the Rising Phoenix. I'm glad that Mando straps on, he's got the ground support with Kara and the weapon and everything, but he straps on his backpack, his Rising Phoenix, and he takes off. The funny part about it is that the armorer told him it's going to take him a minute to get used to it.
Exactly.
She referred to it like it was a thing alive. So they were going to have to bond.
And he had only ever done basic training with it many years ago.
Right. And right before that, to take a step back right quick, right before that, Grief Karga says, have the baby do the hand thing. Can he do the hand thing? Let the baby do the hand thing.
Yeah.
That was adorable.
Like, how you doing? I'm all out of horsepower right now, but give me some Bubblicious, I'll be all right.
Yeah. When he said that, I don't know. I don't know what it was about this episode. I kept flashing back to different things, but he was saying the thing with, do you have the baby do the thing? I flashed back to the Dave Chappelle special where he's like, hey, baby. So,
selling weed.
Yeah. I was expecting Dave Chappelle to hop up from behind a rock or something, be like, hey, baby, stop the TIE fighter. So, yeah, sorry about that.
Well,
Maybe
Chappelle,
you don't need to sell no weed. I got 4 kids to feed.
Yeah, Chappelle actually would have fit in this episode. We would have believed that, too, because so many uncharacteristic things kept happening. I'm like, it's good, but that was unnecessarily dramatic. The stormtroopers are like, what's that? Is that like a thermal detonator? Yeah, okay. Time to die.
Yeah.
But so anyway, yeah, so I really like it felt like I'm going way back here. It felt like an episode of Speed Racer, but it felt like, strap on the backpack, time to take them out.
Yeah.
And so it was cool. It was just kind of funny in an old cartoon kind of way, like we needed some music playing, like a Superman shirt rip or something. But anyway.
You know what I thought the coolest part about that whole TIE fighter fight scene was? I don't know if you guys remember this from the 70s in the original TIE fighter toy that you would press the button and the
panels pop off.
Right.
Yeah.
You look at that fight scene and you look at the struts holding off on the wing panels. It's exactly like the toy. I was waiting for him to find the button and pop the wing. So I was like, that's pretty cool. I was like, that's cool. I like that. So, yeah, it was weird. I just had a real flashback to my childhood looking at that because he's right there in that spot. And I don't know why that made such an impression on me as a kid, but I remember all the engineering specs from that toy, evidently, because it looked exactly like the toy.
I remember thinking about that scene. Once again, here's Moff Gideon, and apparently he's not too concerned about what shape he's going to get the baby in, because he is strafing them all in a TIE fighter.
Yeah.
Something that is made to shoot down other spaceships. And he's just strafing the crap out of the area. I was like, yeah, you sure want that baby back pretty bad. I guess maybe even one finger will do. So, I don't know. That's always bothered me, how careless he is about that whole thing. Now, when he first took off in the rocket, and he didn't just kind of grab the ship immediately, he flew up past it, I thought, oh no, they just told him it's going to don't make him into some sort of weird prodigy where he's going to start flying circles around. I was so glad to see that all he could manage to do was I'm just going to go straight up and I'm going to hit it with my with my Batman cord and catch on there.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, that's a lot better. That's a lot better.
So that you're not an instant, you don't have instant mastery of this thing.
Yeah, it was like, don't have instant mastery. Please, don't go Ray on me.
It was almost like that scene from Indiana Jones where he's being dragged behind the truck.
Yeah.
You know, I appreciated that. That was pretty cool. The fact that he was like trying to hold on and then he was being dragged around the air until he eventually got onto it. Yeah, that was cool. I like that.
And speaking of other nods to Lucas, and I don't know if you guys have noticed, I haven't noticed it every episode, but apparently some directors, they do different things to homage the original trilogy. And one director kept using wipes as transitions, and George was big on wipes. That's all the transitions are wipes in like the first Star Wars. So I noticed that, and I was like, "Oh what a subtle thing to do! What a subtle homage."
That's cool.
And I appreciate the fact that I hadn't really noticed before on a TIE fighter, and I don't know if this is canonical to all of them or maybe just Gideon's because it made for a better scene, you know. But his TIE fighter had a window in its top hatch, so they could actually be facing each other while they're having their little dogfight in the air. That was pretty cool.
Definitely cool. I also like the way, because I told you Mando is Batman. They pretty much established that from the beginning. Yeah. So the way he has his little bat bombs, but the first one flies out of his hand, that was cool.
That was a nice touch.
And then he finally gets two on, which is exactly what Batman would do, and then jumps off. And I noticed, however, that when Moff Gideon fell, the ship didn't explode. I was like, he's coming back.
Oh, yeah.
You know, sci-fi rule, TV rule, movie rule. Ships that get blown out of the sky explode on impact. And the only reason they don't is if the driver's coming back.
That's right.
Part of the movie rule is no one on the ground goes to check to make sure the bad guy's dead.
That too. Oh, my goodness.
And, like a TIE fighter can't glide. Like an X-Wing at least is built like an airplane, so you can imagine it gliding in. Mm-hmm. So I'm just like, when I saw that thing hit, even without the explosion, I was like, are TIE fighters just filled with airbags? How did he survive that?
Right. And so then we get our second and last scene, which has to go down as the most Disney-fied cheesy scene. It's like the happy ending. Grease all happy, and Mando, you're restored, and everybody likes you now, and guild, stuff is gone, and you can stay here with me and Kara, or Kara's going to stay here, or it's like we're a family. Golly gee, I'm so happy. And I was like, okay, super cheese. I could make a grilled cheese sandwich on how cheesy that is. And Kara, I'm still trying to quite figure her out because I'm like, she, I know she hates the Empire. She always came across as her loyalty, her allegiance was only to herself. But she seems a little too willing to kind of fall in with Grief. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. It just felt like such a, just such like an easy, we can take care of me, or maybe I'll take care of you and the kid and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, man, this is like Star Wars Mayberry, but okay.
And I absolutely feel that, this is my feeling again, but like that was a rewrite. I feel that Grief was supposed to die, and they didn't want to end the episode like that, and they rewrote it to give us the happy Disney ending. So,
yeah, because we were all predicting like a bummer cliffhanger ending. I was totally ready for it, but think about it. Even the last episode. So these two episodes, which basically make our grand finale. If you look at it, we have 3 sudden character arcs. I mean, like sudden, Grief, like, Baby Yoda heals me. Okay, I'm on your side. Mando is like, I'm going to take off my helmet and you're going to heal me. And I love you now, robot. I love you, IG. And Kara's like, I was really been my own thing. I'm totally independent. It's like, well, maybe I'll hang out with you, even though I just met you and I was talking about shooting you just the last episode.
Right. Last episode, I was like, let's just kill him and be done with it.
Yeah, right. It's all really convenient.
But now I'm your bodyguard, so great, off to the next adventure.
That really makes me think that Nemesis is onto something. Like, You know that there's definitely markers within the episodes that make you feel like it's really going to go in a particular direction, and it really had a super Disney ending.
But here's what I want you to notice. I want you to notice that almost without exception, every time we have one of those moments, they cut to a shot of Baby Yoda laughing. So right as Mando's flying off and Grief and Kara are standing there in the air team or whatever, there's a shot of Baby Yoda kind of looking at him, laughing, kind of waving.
To make us feel even better about it.
But also to give credence to what Nemesis was saying, that this kid might be laughing at everybody because he's manipulating the mind.
Ooh.
Once again, if you ever do a review of all the episodes, I want you to notice every time we have one of those major character flips you just talked about that are awfully convenient, they always cut to a shot of Baby Yoda's face afterward. Always.
Now that we've got all the episodes, I think I might have to marathon this thing and really study it and take some notes.
Because they always zoom back in on him every time a decision like that is made, and every time something that seems like it's about to happen or has happened that's out of character, they always zoom into him, and he's like, do, and I'm like, oh, okay, this guy is force pushing the minds.
Right. It may just be a crazy fan theory, but if that turns out what they, at some point they reveal that, boom, mind blown. Gonna have to go back and watch the whole series again. So.
Oh, dude, that would be so strong if they go there.
It retroactively changes everything.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we get a brief Kuil burial thing. I think he deserved a little bit better than that. I liked it. I'm glad.
Oh, man, I kept hoping somehow he was just grievously injured. I was like, damn it. There's no doubt now he's gone.
Yeah. I'm glad they acknowledged it, and I'm glad Mando made the little grave for him, and the release got that. But he was such a great character. I'm like,
oh, yes.
Like, oh, man, I hate to see him go, but there's no doubt now. So, so I guess it kind of is what it is.
Right.
And then we get, of course, the ending that changes everything.
Absolutely.
We knew that Moff Gideon wasn't dead, but we didn't quite know what he literally had up his sleeve. And right at the end, after Mando takes off and, it looked like, him and his shotgun partner and Baby Yoda's, playing with the necklace and everything's really cute and blah, 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 blah. Then we go back over to the TIE fighter. We see the Jawas doing what Jawas do. And what comes out of that hole? A dark saber, a black lightsaber. Holy cow.
Not a dark saber, the dark saber.
The one and only dark saber.
That's right. And so you got to watch Clone Wars and Rebels to understand the significance. And Maul once used it, but it was the Mandalorian symbol of leadership.
Right.
And
then it was also part of a breakaway faction of the Mandalorians had it, the Death Watch, for a while.
Right.
Free
Vizsla used to use it quite a bit.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of Mandalorian and Sith. Maul's breakaway, Sith cult had the Darksaber for a long time. So there's a whole bunch of things that they could bring into the show just by that one scene. When I saw the Darksaber,
are you guys aware of the origin of the Darksaber?
I believe so.
All right. So for those out there who don't know, the Darksaber was created by the only Mandalorian who became a Jedi, and he created his own unique saber, the Darksaber. So there's another bridging of the gap between the Jedi Order and the Mandalorian. So it just all kind of intersects.
That's right. And so because there is such a history with that blade, it once again completely changes the depth of Moff Gideon's character. He's a great character, played by a great actor, but now that he has that, now that we see that he has had his hands in a bunch of events that have happened in Clone Wars and Rebels and have happened before this show, and now this guy is way deeper in than we thought.
Not only that,
how did he get the saber from the last person who held the saber?
right?
Which had been Pre Vizsla's second in command of the Death Watch. When she was reorganizing the Death Watch and the Mandalorians, the Darksaber got passed on to her in Rebels. Mm-hmm. So you're like, okay, are we going to have some more tie-ins? Because that would be kind of cool.
And Sabine from Rebels had it for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But, once the Mandalorians find out that he has a Darksaber, it becomes like a blood feud between them and Moff Gideon, because that's considered almost like a Mandalorian relic.
Yeah.
So that takes things to a whole other level. And I'm assuming that blood feud's going to be in the, in the person of Mando versus Moff Gideon for possession of the Darksaber. So
I guess it makes sense because the Empire's been stealing all their Beskar. Why wouldn't they steal all their artifacts?
Right.
So we have a perfect setup for season 2. Let me say one more thing before I do the wrap up, and you guys can tell me what you think about this too. Have you noticed that some of, if not the best episodes of this show, are when Mando has a crew?
Yes.
He had a crew in episode 6 that was against him, and he has a crew here that loves him and would be willing to give their lives for him, all of them. But these episodes where he has a crew, so I thought at the end of this one, he was finally going to have like his permanent crew. But he flies off again with Baby Yoda by himself. I'm like, So I don't know, but the episodes where he has a crew, they seem to work so well for me. Do you know what I'm saying?
I think.
You go ahead.
I was going to say, I think the strongest episodes, I agree with you. I think the strongest episodes are better when it's not just him doing the episodic, him and Baby Yoda visit Planet X to have some adventure on Planet X. But when there's more than one person involved and it's all tied together, it gives us a lot more, it gives us better storytelling. And I think it allows different emotions and different drama to play out, because I'm not saying Mando's a limited character, but he is constrained to a certain extent by his code and by who he is. And so we get some great interactions between him and Baby Yoda, but allowing us to have other characters in there to provide different perspectives helps a lot, I believe.
No, I agree, because he has to have something to play off of, because like you said, he's somewhat limited in terms of the way he presents himself, because he was just kind of a regular bounty hunter when we meet him.
Mm-hmm.
But now he's completely turned everything upside down, if you think about it. The guild, the Mandalorian code, whether or not they're alive. I mean, just so many things are different now because of the choices that he's made. So, again, it's a perfect setup into season 2, because now we know we're going to spend at least part of the season trying to find out who the Baby Yoda species people are. And that, by definition, is just awesome. That's something we've always wanted to know.
Yep.
So if that's written well, that'll be fun to see. I hope they don't totally mess that up, because some things should remain a mystery anyway. But I wouldn't mind seeing that again if it's written well. If they do it well, I'm like, okay, let's go for it. And then we also know now that Moff Gideon is going to be on the hunt for him. He's never going to let Mando rest now. And once Mando sees that he has the Darksaber, then, like you said, it takes it to the blood feud level. It's going to be a personal thing. It's going to be, because we understand the code now. We understand the creed. We understand what the Mandalorian creed and honor is about. So there's no way he allows this Moff to walk around with that Darksaber. There's just no way.
And what's fascinating about that, the creed is so strong that you notice that even though Mando betrayed the guild, the Mandalorians came out of hiding.
Yes.
Even though he's you would think any other organization we need to cut bait on this guy. He's going to cause problems for it. We're staying in the shadows to stay alive. Mm-hmm. But no, once one of them makes the decision, they all come together on that. And even with the armorer, his actions have resulted into so many of his brothers and sisters getting killed. that was a big pile of helmets that she was working with.
Sure was.
And what does she do? She doesn't castigate him. She doesn't strike him down where he is. She's like, all right, you've earned your signet. Here's the baby. You got a new mission. Go get to it. That is, I find that the creed is that strong a bond between them. I find that really fascinating. It gives it an interesting dynamic in the Mandalorians. And as to what you mentioned earlier, I think a lot of the show was still going to be this kind of lone wolf and cub format. And the fact that Mando is restricted in what he does personality-wise and obviously facially, that plays into a lot of those samurai dramas where, these guys would go long periods without talking and just that stony face.
Mm-hmm.
But the best episodes are the episodes with the crew, and I want more of that because I love the jailbreak episode because I love seeing that seedy underbelly of the Star Wars universe.
Definitely.
We know that those characters are coming after Mando. They're going to break out. Either they're going to get to where they were going and they're going to escape, or they're going to break out of the prison bars. But one way or the other, Mayfield, Xi'an, and
I was so happy to see that they didn't all get killed off.
Yes, they're coming back.
I wouldn't be surprised if Gideon breaks them out and sets them on his on Mando's.
Ooh,
Oh,
that'd be nice.
that could definitely be interesting. All right, folks. Well, we're going to end it right there. We could again talk for another hour, but we love this show. We love the Star Wars world. Say that 3 times fast. Characters, great writing. We love how this show has basically pulled off the feat of pulling the camera back. It both immersed us in the Star Wars story world and gave us new information, new details, new points of view, and it basically strengthened and enriched and added even more depth to probably the greatest sci-fi fantasy franchise of all time. So the only thing I would say in conclusion is I wish that this kind of writing and this kind of attitude and this kind of approach would permeate every piece of Star Wars media. If they all loved it, if they all cared about it, if they all understood how to write both the familiar and the new, which The Mandalorian pulls off with excellence. If I could sum up what it does best, it takes the familiar and gives you the new in the proper doses.
Absolutely.
And so I just hope it sets a tone. I hope it sets a precedent. I hope if they're so concerned with us liking Star Wars again and older fans getting, reinvested in all the stuff that's been coming out, I hope they take their clue from this show and everything begins to conform to this kind of norm. So both of you give me a final word on the season. Start with Nemesis.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I guess my final word for this season and this show is that, we've obviously had critiques on different episodes and even this episode, but I've enjoyed every show, and I think the reason I've enjoyed it is because it's obvious the people doing this show respect and love Star Wars, the franchise, and Star Wars, the lore, and everything that came before. And they give us a nod to the past and give us some new stuff, like you said, going in. But that respect is there. And I appreciate it. And that's why I like the show, even when there are eye-rolling moments, like when the guy monologues and walks off. I still love the episode. So
awesome. What's your last word, Bracey?
All right. So obviously it's not perfect, but it is really darn good. And I think Disney is starting to wake up to that fact, and I hope they do pay attention to it. And most importantly, pay attention to what we're saying. I mean, everybody's online now. Everybody's opinion is out there. Stop this whole, toxic fan BS. The worst thing Disney ever did was turning on the fans, letting important people in their organization castigate the fans online. When you watch The Mandalorian and you see the fan reaction, I didn't see Disney turn around and praising the fans. Oh, the toxic fandom's gone. No, if you give us something that we like, if you give us something good, if you give us something character and story driven, we will come back. Now, it might take time to get the sort of fan base that you used to have, but fans are forgiving. We just want, we want better than what you've done. And I keep praying one day that I'll hear the voice of James Earl Jones saying, "Kathleen Kennedy, you have failed me for the last time." And that's the last ever.
I think that's just so true. I think I already said my last piece, but this is my last piece. The amazing part about this series is that the old fans and the new fans both like the same piece of Star Wars media in this series, which is incredible. So it should tell you.
That's all you need to know.
Yep.
That's right, because Star Wars, through The Mandalorian, can once again become a unifier. And on that note, we will end this episode. I want to thank my guests, Jeff Bracey. Thank you, Jeff.
Always a pleasure, sir.
Thank you, David Nemesis Howard.
No problem. Always a pleasure to be on here and talking whatever we're talking about here on Sloppy Spoilers.
And thank you guys, the listening audience. Thank you for downloading. Thank you for tuning in. We really appreciate your support. And we're going to continue to bring you some more episodes of Sloppy Spoilers talking about the content and the media that we love and we can't get enough of. So thank you so much. And everybody enjoy the new year. Happy New Year to everyone. Hope it had a good start. New decade, that's right. And we hope it brings good things and prosperity to everybody. Thanks so much. And we'll see you next time on the next episode of Sloppy Spoilers.